So welcome, Fairfax County, to your virtual plant clinic for today, April 1st. April is the start of the really great wildflower blooming months. In Virginia, wildflowers all throughout April into early May. And next slide, please, Shirley. You might have heard of spring wildflowers being called ephemerals, which is kind of a beautiful, soft spring word. It comes from the Greek ephemeros, meaning lasting a day, from the Greek word hemera. I think there's a goddess, Hemera, the goddess of the day. It means short-lived, fleeting, or brief. So these flowers grow under the undergrowth of trees before the leaves have bloomed out, because they need some sun to bloom, but they are protected by the leaf litter, which gives them some warmth. So even if there's a brisk wind above, they are cozy down in the leaf litter and can have enough sun and bloom in April into early May. Next slide, Shirley. So I did some research to find out that when Virginia was a colony, the colonists came and saw all this new growth they had never seen in the old world. John Clayton was one of Virginia's earliest, best-known naturalists. He also became Attorney General, and he wrote a book called Flora of Virginia back in the 1700s. And 250 years later, they updated it. So now it's called Flora of Virginia. It's got its own website. But this is a slide from the British Museum where his collection is housed, and that's a pressed flower from the 1700s, 300 years old. So, and this book is available also in app form, so you could put it on your phone or your iPad. And if you read the reviews about it, many ecologists, naturalists, and botanists really count it as a great resource. So that's our colonial naturalist, John Clayton, and you'll hear a little bit more about him later when we talk about spring beauties. Next slide, please, Shirley. So where can you see these wildflowers? There are lots of places. These are a few that I have, been to myself. Off the George Washington Parkway, you see an exit for Turkey Run. There are wildflowers there. Riverbend Park and also Scotts Bluff Nature Preserve in Great Falls. You can see these wildflowers. Bull Run Regional Park in Manassas is well known for carpets of bluebells in the spring. I remember going there one Mother's Day, and I thought, well, we'll see a few bluebells. And it was just the whole forest floor was carpeted with bluebells. It was really memorable. There's also Thompson Wildlife Preserve out in Fauquier County. You need to go out 66 to, I think it's Markham, Virginia. And lots of wildflowers there, including my favorite, which is wild ginger, which is hard to find. It kind of hides, but it's there. But we're not talking about wild ginger today. Also, other places off the George Washington Parkway, Seneca Regional Park, Long Branch Nature Center in Arlington. So we are lucky to live close to wildflowers here in suburban Virginia. Next slide, please, Shirley. So that's just a slide showing you what it looks like for the exit off of the Parkway for Turkey Run. I always wondered where that goes, and I never took that exit, so I plan to. Next slide, please, Shirley. So I wanted to mention, there's a slide that didn't get it in here. I was at Wakefield Park recently in Annandale, and the pathways were covered with these little tiny yellow wildflowers. I wish I had included this slide to show you. I thought, gosh, that's pretty. I wonder what that is. So I went and researched it. And it's called a fig, anyway, it's Ficara verna, which is not native to this area. It's from Europe and Asia, and it was brought over with the landscape trade, and of course escaped cultivation into the, and it was brought to the landscape because it grows early. It grows in March, And, you know, our ephemerals come out in April, early May. So I'm sure there was a lot of desire in snowy Virginia to start seeing some flowers in March. But these are invasive, and I wonder how many spring beauties, bluebells, violets we could see instead of Ficaria verna, the little yellow flower, if we had waited. So I'm gonna go on and let my Master Gardener colleagues, Carolyn and Deborah, tell you more about blueberries, I'm sorry, bluebells, and violets and spring beauties.
Well, Deborah talked to us about Virginia bluebells and spring beauties, and I love these two. Okay, Deborah.
Thank you, Shirley and Susan. That was great. And I agree. I love to talk about these two wildflowers because they are named after our own state, the Virginia bluebells and the Virginia spring beauty. Both are native to Fairfax County. Both are spring ephemeral, as Susan describes. They're woodland perennials that emerge in early spring to flower and seed, and then they go dormant and disappear by the summer. And pop up again the next spring. And my absolute favorite flower of all is Mertensia virginica. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, which is the Virginia bluebell. This flower is native to the eastern United States and found in moist woodlands, riverbanks, and floodplains, like along the Potomac. Unfortunately, it's threatened in much of its native range because of habitat destruction. But we're very lucky to have large numbers of these flowers in some of our local parks. I mean, Susan mentioned Riverbend Park in Great Falls is awesome. And Bull Run Regional Park in Centerville claims to have one of the largest stands of these bluebells in the entire country. Next slide. And as you can see, when the leaves first emerge in the spring, in early spring, they are oval shaped and purple, but they quickly turn gray-green in color. The leaves are 2 to 8 inches long. They form clumps 2 feet tall and 1 foot wide. And as we mentioned before, the plant goes dormant, the leaves turn yellow and die completely to the ground by summer. So next, let's talk about these gorgeous flowers in the next slide. Absolutely gorgeous flowers. They bloom April to May for about 3 weeks. They're lovely nodding clusters of bell-shaped flowers on coiled stems that straighten as the flowers open up. They're mostly sky blue to pink in color. And as you can see in the photos, the buds start out as pink. Then they turn blue when they open up. Then they turn pink again after they're fertilized. They're a very important pollinator plant for large numbers of insects, bumblebees, mason bees, long-tongued native bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, moths, nectar flies, all love this plant. So it's a great plant for your garden. So next slide, we'll talk about how to grow these plants. They're easily grown in shade in rich, moist garden soil that's well-drained and has a neutral to slightly acid pH. The fertilized flowers form seeds, and they also spread through rhizomes, which are underground root stalks that send out shoots. 2 big pluses about this plant is that the deer avoids the plant as well as rabbits. And they also are one of the few plants that grow under black walnut trees. And this is a photo I took of a friend of mine. We were running at Riverbend Park last April. You can see the flowers are everywhere. This season, the peak bloom time for bluebells is the middle of April, like the week of April 11th. So don't miss out on this spectacular show. So the next slide, we're going to talk about another flower that's blooming right now. And that's a Claytonia virginica, which is the Virginia spring beauty, named after John Clayton, the famous botanist that Susan was talking about. This is another very delicate, beautiful flower that is one of the first flowers to bloom in the spring, blooms as early as February. It's native to moist woodlands and meadows in the mid-Atlantic region. And all the photos that you see of the spring beauty, I took 3 weeks ago near my home at Runnymede Park in Herndon. So if you take the next slide, you'll see that in early spring, grass-like leaves emerge from the ground, and the plant has to have 2 leaves in order to form a flower, as you can see in that second photo. Then, like the bluebells, it goes dormant and disappears in the summer. And this plant stores food in what's called a corm, which is an underground swollen stem that looks like a bulb or a tuber. And it's very tasty to chipmunks and squirrels. Next slide. The flower appears from February to May in our area. It's delicate, white, star-shaped with pink veins and pink anthers. It's small, it's about a 1/2 inch wide. The flowers close at night and on cloudy days, and they form loose clusters of buds on the top of the stem. And you can see the clusters of buds in the first photo between the 2 flowers. It's a very, very important early pollinator plant because it provides lots of nectar when other flowers are just not around. And then in the next slide, growing the plant. It grows in well-drained, moist, acidic soil. It prefers partial shade, but it will tolerate full sun. It spreads by seeding or by multiplying corms. And like the bluebell, the deer generally avoid it. So it's a great plant to grow in your yard, in a rock garden, or to even naturalize in the lawn. You don't want to pull them out of the wild, but you can buy the plants or the seeds online or at native plant sales. And so that's my discussion of 2 gorgeous flowers and the resources I used. And the next slide was University of Wisconsin Horticultural Division and Master Gardeners of Northern Virginia, Virginia Cooperative Extension. So Carolyn's going to talk about another gorgeous wildflower, violets.
Let's see if we have any questions about Virginia bluebells or spring beauties. Are there any questions in the chat box?
Yes, I noticed someone was asking where to obtain these flowers, and Deborah just talked about getting seed or plants from a nursery. You don't want to collect them in the wild. You want to get them from a nursery. And I'm not sure, Deborah, do they grow best from seed, or is it best to get plants?
It's easier. They do readily reseed in under ideal conditions, so you can get the seed, but some of your large nurseries are carrying the bluebell. I have not seen any plants of spring beauty. There are some great native plant sales that are coming up. I gotta tell you one in my local area. Friends of Runnymede Park is having a native plant sale April the 17th in downtown Herndon at the Art Space, and they have a lot of native plants. So these native plant sales that happen, you can get these plants, but you can also order them online. But I've seen the bluebells in some of your bigger nurseries that carry perennials and native plants.
Yes, I have too. And someone was asking, is there a nursery locally that carries these plants or seeds? So I believe as part of our program, we can't recommend necessarily a particular commercial provider. The native plant sales are held, in the spring, and of course it's COVID and things are shut, but I believe you can arrange to pick up things. And the Virginia Native Plant Society, VNPS.org, they will have a listing of local native plant sales. So you try there, and I know people are communicating in the chat with each other, so.
Okay, Carolyn's going to talk to us about violets. And a lot of people think this is a weed, but I have a lot of violets also in my woods, and I think they're beautiful. So Carolyn, We're ready to hear about violets.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. And I'm kind of on the same page as you that they are charming, they're sweet, they're cheery. It's great to see them, you know, popping out now. And they seem to be pretty resilient with some of the ups and downs in weather we've been having lately. So just a quick introduction. I am a first-year intern through the Green Spring Extension Master Gardener Program, and did it virtually, you know, in September to December 2020. It was an awesome experience. So I recognize Shirley, but I don't think anybody else. So that was great. And just in full transparency, I was borrowing somebody's template. Steve Cooper from my class did a great job, and I seem to have left a little of his name at the bottom. But today we're going to be talking about violets, again, in the spring flower arena, and we'll be talking about 3 in particular, and that are native to the state. So can I have the next slide? Great. So we'll just talk about quick background on violets in general, you know, historical type stuff. Talk about the general violet structure because it tends to be pretty similar across the 3 we're going to talk about. And the 3 we're going to talk about are listed, and they will be the Viola Sororia, and I don't even know the right way to say this. Is it just Wild? And it was named after a scientist in Germany. The Viola pedata L, and then the Viola canadensis L variety canadensis. So I'm still learning how to work in all these Latin names. So I will get there eventually, so bear with me. So let me see here. I think we want to
go back. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm kind of all over the place myself. Now, is there the next slide, does it say background? Yeah, okay. So these violets are found all over the world. There are about 400 plus species globally. We have about 60 that are native to the US, 2 dozen species that are native to Virginia. And I think that they are so prodigious in terms of how they're found everywhere, because they are so adjustable to a variety of landscape conditions. Now, because they can kind of live anywhere, and you can find them anywhere, we often find them in our landscape. We find them in our garden beds, we find them in our gardens, we find them in the middle of our, you know, for those that want a pristine lawn, there's going to be one happy clump of them in there. And, you know, I really just see them as I don't see them as weeds, but again, anything that we don't want to have around is considered a weed, even if it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Let's see. They also support native wildlife. Violets are the only host for the great fritillary butterfly caterpillars. So if we did not have violets, we would not have that species of butterfly. Ants, birds, and mice eat the seeds. The caterpillars, the fritillary caterpillars, and rabbits eat the leaves. And specialized bees, butterflies, and moths drink the nectar. And just from a historical perspective, they had, in the past, they were used, had medicinal uses. They were used as a food source, although, you know, they have kind of a bland flavor. It would take a lot to really fill you up, I think. So they're used in salads. The pretty colors of them were used as food dyes. And I think we've probably all had a candied violet on a wedding cake somewhere along the way in our socializing. And historically, they would be symbolize innocence and modesty. And the Greeks and Romans and medieval Christians used them during celebrations, again, for you know, food and all those kinds of things. And then in Victorian times, I mean, I think a lot of you have probably heard of the language of flowers. And so in Victorian times, a white violet meant innocence, while a purple violet symbolized the giver's thoughts were occupied with love about the recipient. So it's all very charming and sweet and dainty yeah, so, you know, these days, some people love them, some people look for every reason to get rid of them. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, the general structure, they're an herbaceous perennial, they're low growing ground cover. They rarely get more higher than ankle high. They do come in a variety of colors, and this is kind of the overall spectrum of violets, not just the three that we're going to be talking about specifically, but you know, because they do come in violet, white, blue, yellow, you know, very pale violet, very dark violet. The flowers and leaves are on separate stems. So you're not going to have a stem with a flower on it that also has a leaf on it. The leaves tend to be heart-shaped, and the flowers are interesting. They have 2 upper petals, 2 lateral petals, and I think 2 of the 3 we're going to talk about today are bearded. They have the white hairs on some of those lateral petals. And then the lower petal is considered a landing pad. It's marked in a way that attracts the pollinators in, and they land on it so they can slurp the nectar. And I found that kind of interesting. They all make seed pods, so they can spread through rhizomes and from pollination, but they do all generate seed pods as well. And they do all have a clumping nature. So you may see an individual rosette with some flowers coming out of it, or you may see multiple rosettes all together. Okay, let's see if I want to add anything else on that. And with those seed pods, I should add, they do a popping release. So when they're ready to go, all the seeds just pop out. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Okay. All righty, sorry about this. There was so much information, you know, I was like, how much information can there be about violets? There was way more than I thought. But like I said, some of them do have similar things going on with them. The Viola Sororia wild has a couple of different names: common blue violet, dooryard violet, Confederate violet, woolly blue violet, and you know, I have a couple of pictures to the right of the ones from my yard. And so you can see as they're starting to clump in that first picture, and the picture to the right is the flower itself. And you can see kind of the striated, veined bottom leaf that is going to start bringing attracting the critters in. They can be found, you know, in woods, thickets, along roadways, in the woods, in bright sunlight. I mean, they do have a pretty hardy constitution. And it's the way it works is you have your flowers on top, the colorful ones, and then the ones that make the seeds, they are actually underneath the leaves, and they do not open up and bloom per se. When they bloom, that's when they're shooting out their seeds. So the Viola pedata L is called the bird's foot violet. And that's because, as you can see probably in that first picture, the left picture in that second row, the deep lobed leaves, they look like a little bird foot. And so that's a big differentiator compared to all the other heart-shaped ones. Also, on this one, the where did my notes page go? Sorry. I'll have it right next time. I think it's the anther. In it, you always are going to have, lilac or violet colored leaves around it. You're also going to have the orange anther in the middle. That's also going to be attracting the animals and the nature to this flower. It's great in clumping, lovely over long pathways and all of that good stuff. And it does prefer well-drained soils, sandy or gravelly is preferred. And this one can grow up to 8 inches high. And let's see. Yeah. Okay, and then the last one, the Viola canadensis, is known as the Canada violet or the tall white violet. Its leaves are a little bit different shape. They've got, looks like some veination in them. And they're smaller white flowers. These are the ones that really just, you're not going to find them pretty much outside of the more mountainous part of the state. So they really do have a much more specific area where they like to roam, and they don't spread by the runners. They really, like rhizomes, like some of the others did. They do it solely with seeds. And so this chart that I've put in, the formatting is a little wonky, but I was just trying to, the information about these 3 different species of violets, I try to just put in a different type of visual so that you have kind of their habitat, their identifiers, how they reproduce, and their species and common names all in one place as a quick reference tool. And let's see. I think, and in closing, I think it's important to keep in mind, Doug Tallamy reported out in his book, Bringing Home Nature in 2009, that 29 species of Lepidoptera, if I said that correctly, the butterfly moth folks are dependent upon violets, especially in these early spring weeks. And as we said, the great fritillary would be going extinct if we did not have violets, but there are the other butterflies and moths, and as we said, bees too, that really rely on the early nectar of these flowers. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions if there are any, or get back to somebody, after the fact.
Okay, are there any questions in the chat box?
I don't see anything from our attendants. I had a question about how it's so, or an observation that the landing pad seems to have like a white dot or something, as if it's trying to say, hey, land here, like
it's
landing
like a runway. I'm almost kind of, and as I was looking at it, a couple of them have the bearding, the little tufts, the little hairs, and that is supposed to help with some of the nectar and how the animals feed on it. But I was like, wow, I wish everything in life had something that clear and, a place for me to sit as I, took everything in. But I thought that was a really neat thing. And, those little nuances by nature are, pretty incredible.
Thank you. Yes.
The Canada violet, the white one,
Yeah.
I wonder why the common name is Canada violet. Is it native here in Virginia?
It is native, but in the Piedmont mountain areas only. So I think it likes the cooler, some of the cooler temps, and I think, and they do better in, I think it's a certain mineral. I think on that last chart, there's something about the soil too that they like, with a lot of dark mineral deposits and things like that.
Oh, I see a lot of the dark purple here where I am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so pretty, but I want to put on a warm coat and go outside and see if I see any of the bird's foot. a very different leaf structure.
Yeah, I mean, I have, maybe I've never looked close enough, but, with any of these workshops, there's always something now I'm looking for, and I didn't know I needed to look for it before. So.
Right. I think they're really pretty, and rabbits do like to eat them. Mine are so pretty, and my garden area is fenced in because of the deer. We have a real deer problem, and it fences in a big sunny area and then part of my wooded area. And the funny thing is, of course, the deer can't get in, but rabbits can always find a way to get inside my deer fence. And for the first couple of weeks, the violets are beautiful. And then I've noticed the rabbits get smart, and the rabbits will eat them.
Well, and to your point, Shirley, not seeing the deer, but I mean, your deer can't get in, but violets are something that can give you the pops of color, and deer tend to just leave them alone. And it doesn't matter which variety. So, but if it's not the deer, it's the rabbits. So.
Well, the rabbits are nice and let me enjoy them for a couple of weeks, and then they're flattened. So I guess they're trying to share with me.